Welcome, everyone, to another Ethical Point Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're tuning in. Today, we are diving deep into a really fascinating and honestly incredibly timely UPSC General Studies Paper 4 case study. We're going to unpack the severe ethical friction a senior IPS officer faces when dealing with a highly complex hybrid security threat.
That's right. And as an aspiring civil servant, you really can't just rely on textbook theories for a scenario like this. We have to figure out how to balance hard, uncompromising law enforcement with genuine, deep compassion. So for today's explainer, I'll be playing the role of the skeptical student, asking the tough questions, while my co-host guides us as the mentor. Let's get into it.
Okay, here is a quick roadmap of what we're covering today. We'll start with the ethical dilemma, move on to mapping the stakeholders, compare hard versus soft power, break down the prevent and rehabilitate strategy, explore the smart intelligence framework, and wrap it all up with a concrete UPSC answer writing strategy. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the ethical dilemma, a dual threat. So I want you to imagine for a second that you are Raman. You're a senior IPS officer, and you're dealing with a brand new global terrorist group that is actively targeting unemployed local graduates.
Right, and this is exactly where the administrative friction really heats up. Raman's cyber cell discovers that these young people are spending, 6 to 8 hours a day online. They're actively endorsing secessionist ideology with extremist handlers. So the big question is, what are Raman's actual options to tackle this threat without completely alienating the local public?
Well, to answer that, we first have to define the exact nature of the problem, which is what we call a hybrid threat. Listen, this isn't just your standard law enforcement issue where you can just go in and make a bunch of arrests. These handlers are strategically exploiting severe socioeconomic vulnerabilities, specifically cripplingly high unemployment. If Raman ignores that root cause, the unemployment, he fundamentally fails to stop the cycle of radicalization. That makes total sense. Okay, moving on to section 2, mapping the stakeholders. Any good civil servant knows that before you act, you've got to map the board to fully understand everyone who is involved in the situation.
Exactly. It's like a giant puzzle. You have Raman and the state administration, and they are understandably driven by strict, non-negotiable state security goals. But on the flip side, you have the highly vulnerable groups, the targeted youth themselves, and, crucially, their families, who are experiencing massive emotional distress. Plus, you've got civil society and social organizations trying desperately to rebuild community trust. So the core friction here is balancing the state's hardline security mandate against the very real psychological impact on local families.
Which brings us nicely to section 3, hard power versus soft power. Look, putting on my skeptic hat for a second, if these kids are actively communicating with terrorists, shouldn't Raman just launch an immediate hardline crackdown, use the UAPA or the IT Act to disrupt the network as fast as possible?
It's totally tempting, I get it, but let's really weigh those options. Yes, hard power disrupts the network immediately, but the massive downside? It completely alienates innocent youth and actually validates the terrorist narrative that the state is persecuting them. Soft power, on the other hand, focuses on community counseling. It wins trust, but it takes a lot of time. Raman really needs to lean on the ethical principle of proportionality here, balancing the severity of the security threat with the fundamental civil rights of the citizens. Ultimately, we need an integrated synthesis of both approaches.
So we need a balance. Got it. Let's look at how to achieve that in section 4, prevent, protect, and rehabilitate. So how does this integrated strategy actually work on the ground? How do we address both the radicalization and the root cause of unemployment simultaneously?
By deploying a structured prevent, protect, and rehabilitate framework. It works like this. Surveillance helps you identify the soft targets, but then the intervention phase relies heavily on community counseling. This is the core of de-radicalization. Just for clarity, a layman's definition of de-radicalization is essentially psychologically detaching individuals from extremist ideologies and gently bringing them back into mainstream society. At the same time, you run proactive social campaigns to completely neutralize the secessionist narrative alongside state-led skill development tie-ups. Those tie-ups directly eliminate the root grievance of unemployment.
Okay, so the text heavily emphasizes community policing for that intervention pillar. Could you give a layman's definition of that for our listeners? Like, what does that actually look like in practice for an IPS officer? Absolutely. Think of community policing using a simple gardening analogy. You can't just aggressively pull out the weeds, meaning the terrorists, and expect a beautiful, healthy garden to instantly grow. You have to nurture the soil. Community policing is how you nurture that soil. Raman's step-by-step checklist starts with building local peace committees with village elders. Second, you form Mohalla youth clubs. This presents a friendly, approachable face of the police, which fosters immense community trust. And because of that strong trust, step 4 happens entirely naturally. Local families actually feel safe enough to report suspicious recruiters to the police before they ever succeed in radicalizing anyone. That makes sense. But what about the role of local educators? The outline mentions a distinct role for them through something called digital hygiene.
Yes, digital hygiene is a brilliant concept. And no, it doesn't mean wiping down your keyboard. It means actively training local educators to teach media literacy. They are essentially building a psychological firewall right inside the students' brains, helping them to actively identify and just ignore online propaganda. It counters fake news right there in the classroom, which perfectly complements the heavy lifting that technology firms are doing on the back end.
Okay, let's pivot to the tactical side in Section 5, the Smart Intelligence Framework. How exactly does Raman's cybercell enhance their intelligence gathering to actually stay ahead of these global handlers in the long run?
Well, they have to completely upgrade to the smart intelligence model. And that starts with S for HUMINT. In layman's terms, human intelligence isn't just basic community policing. It means carefully and strategically embedding undercover agents right inside local organizations that are suspected of being terrorist fronts. You need those real human eyes and ears on the ground.
Right, and then the M stands for modernizing TECHINT, or technical intelligence. But clarify this for me, is that really just tracking a bunch of keywords on social media?
Oh, no way. It is way beyond simple keyword tracking. Modern TECHINT leverages artificial intelligence and open source intelligence to monitor the dark web and highly encrypted platforms. But more importantly, it uses AI for actual sentiment analysis. This means Raman's team can gauge the overall emotional temperature of the youth online, rather than just passively waiting around for one specific flagged word to pop up on a screen.
So, to summarize the full smart intelligence model, which is absolutely crucial for any professional law enforcement training audience, it's strengthen HUMINT, modernize TECHINT, ensure seamless agency coordination between state and central bodies, facilitate real-time information sharing through fusion centers, and finally, heavily invest in training for cyber investigations and behavioral profiling. This creates a highly professional, incredibly proactive structure.
This brings us to our final segment, Section 6, UPSC Answer Writing Strategy.
So, for the aspirants listening, how do we actually translate this entire ethical framework into a high-scoring 20-mark mains answer?
Great question. You want to structure your way forward or conclusion around the perfect balance of security and liberty. Use this exact quote in your answer. Firm against terrorism, fair towards citizens. Explain that sustainable internal security depends on more than just strict surveillance. It requires tangible employment generation and social inclusion. By treating these vulnerable youths as citizens to be protected rather than just enemies to be hunted, Raman maintains the state's security mandate while beautifully preserving the social fabric of the community.
That is an incredibly powerful way to frame it. Well, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you all with a final provocative thought. As a future civil servant, how will you look beyond just the superficial symptoms of a crime? How will you use integrated government policies to truly address the root causes of youth alienation and prevent extremist recruitment? Think deeply about how you will build that sustainable, long-term stability. Thank you so much for joining us on this Ethical Point Explainer, and keep thinking critically.